On this episode, guys, we're going to deal with farming and how you choose where you want to farm. We're going to deal with open houses on Periscope, good idea, bad idea, and then also how do you deal with sellers who just want to overprice. I spend the majority of my time trying to figure out how to help other people get what they're really after. I do this by speaking at events, writing books, working with coaching students, and sharing a lot of content. All of this creates a ton of questions for people that I can't always get back to, but now I can. This is the place to come where you ask your questions and I'll answer them. Hey guys, Jared James here, and welcome to #JJ Off the Cuff, episode 10. It has been, it's been a long time. I need something to play with. I need like a pen. I'll play with my ring. It's been a long time since we've done one of these. There's just been a lot of things going on. What's been going on the last 3 months? Done some events, done some traveling. I'm home for the year now, which is fantastic. Really didn't do as many events this year. Really was kind of taking a break and building up the infrastructure within this company. Next year, doing a lot more events. You know, we've just booked some events with a lot of the major international brands that many of you work for. I won't name their names right now because we're still signing the contracts, but most of the major brands, I'll be talking at those conferences. We've got a lot going on here right now. We're switching over all our marketing efforts over to probably a company called Jarja Media, although we may come up with something else. But basically, you know, the entrepreneur in me, everybody thinks, oh, real estate coach, real estate this. I'm an entrepreneur. You better be an entrepreneur too. And so the only thing I think that keeps me relevant when I'm going and doing these speeches and talking to people and coaching all these people is the fact that I'm doing everything I'm telling you to do. You know, so I think that makes me a lot more relevant. I think I said in the last JJ Off the Cuff that I think that what makes me different from a lot of coaches that I think like an internet marketer. You know, I really do, and think like a businessman and think like that. So right now we're breaking off a lot of things. We've got a lot of new things coming this year that many people don't know about, which are a lot of work. It's a lot of how to make it work, but that's part of the fun of it, right? I posted something on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something today about the life of an entrepreneur that really very much gave this whole thing. God, we suck, we're failing. God, oh my God, we're doing great. Oh my God, it's going. It's just, that's the life of an entrepreneur. So that's what's going on with me. I would love to hear what's going on with you guys. Guys, you can always send me messages, send me whatever you want on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram, or make sure obviously you're following on Periscope, which is right over here, guys. Thank you so much. But with that being said, guys, let's get in to our first question.
Our first question comes from Gerardo Rodriguez, and he says, big box brokers or boutique independent brokers? What would be the top pros and cons for both? And why do you think there's a visible uprising of many independent brokerages and disruptors across the country? Does it really matter?
Okay, if I was smart, Gerardo, I probably would have avoided this question. Because, I mean, let's face it, what's really going on with this is we're saying, okay, big box brokerages opposed to small box brokerages or boutique brokerages, as many people call them, you know, or as you're saying, they're disrupting the overall industry. I don't know how much they're actually disrupting the industry compared to the fact that everything's so visible now. You know, it's kind of like, I remember 4 years ago when everything on the news was about shark attacks and everybody was afraid to get in the water because every other week the news story of the day was about a new shark attack. And yet the truth is that year shark attacks went down. It just so happens to be that the news decided to cover that. I think we have so many different sources right now to find out about things, to learn about things. We've got so many sources that give us information that we're much more aware of things than we were in the past. Social media does that. The news that we get delivered to our email does that. So I'm not sure how much things are being disrupted because some of the major large companies like Keller Williams and these others are growing to sizes they've never grown to before. So I don't know about that. Now, when you say advantages, disadvantages, obviously, I speak at a lot of these places. I do. We just got hired, you know, to do keynotes and breakouts for some of the top major brokerages. I also work with a lot of the boutique brokerages and the independent brokerages that are out there. And I'm going to tell you that I think, like most things, it's about you. You know, whether you work for Century 21, Remax, ERA, any of these companies, or you work for little small John Smith LLC, you know, whatever it happens to be, it's about leveraging what you have available to you at that moment. I almost think that brokerages, whether they be large or small, brands or boutiques, are a lot like statistics, where you can make statistics say whatever you want them to say. I feel like that's very much what it's like when it comes to brokerages, boutiques, large brands, these kinds of things, is you can use them for whatever it is you want to use them for. There are individual people who operate better within a smaller boutique feel, and then there are people who operate better in a big brand and love the idea of being able to go out and know that everybody already knows their company. They're not having to prove themselves. They're not, in that sense. And consumers, by the way, which is what really matters, are the same way. There are some consumers that love the idea that they know the name of the company coming in, they know the brand, they know it's an international brand, they know. And then there are consumers that like the idea of a smaller boutique where the whole office knows about every listing and that they're going to come through and everybody's going to look. It's not even really about that. It's about you and leveraging what you have at that moment. If you put me in any situation, this isn't arrogant, it's just the truth. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to look around like MacGyver, and I am going to find the toothpick, the stick of gum, and the dirty rock, and figure out how you build a boat out of that gets me to another spot. It's about finding what you have around you and how that's going to leverage what you do best. It's not about what do I need and then let me go. It's okay, here I am. Let me see what I can use here to the best of my best advantage, to my best ability. What narrative, what story do I create around this brand, this brokerage, this whatever it happens to be that ultimately suits me and suits the needs of my consumer. And so I can see people being successful with both. I don't want to sound political, like I'm hedging my bets, but it really is the truth. I say it all the time when I go speak at these places. The reason that I'm able to go into many different places and speak in front of them and say great things about their company or about their brokerage is because I'm focusing on the good things about their company, about their brokerage. I'm not focusing on the things I don't like, which, let's face it, they're everywhere. Small boutique, big they're everywhere, okay? So it's about the individual, it's about the consumer. I don't even know how much it's about that individual place unless you make it about that place.
Our next question is from Lisa Henley, and she says, do you have a coach? Who are your role models or major influencers?
Lisa, great question. I don't have a coach like in the sense of like I hired one of our coaches. But yes, I have a coach. I have a mentor in the sense that I have somebody that I've always kind of went to, just like we do coaching for people. I had a coach when I was selling that I would go to, and then I've had a coach also in life, a mentor that I've dealt with since I was a kid, where I still to this day run things past and meet on a regular basis and go over what I'm doing. And I look for someone to kind of, check my blind spots and to come from a different perspective, and to who knows me and can call BS when I'm just not being realistic about something or true about something that I know I can do or can't do. I absolutely have that. To this day, by the way, I still pay for programs. I still pay good amounts of money for programs, to be in programs and learn constantly. I'm always learning. I told someone recently that I was at an event where I was actually doing the keynote in front of like thousands of people, and I went and threw a hat on and went and sat in a breakout because I wanted to sit in the back and just hear what people were saying, because I always want to learn. I always believe that there's a dynamic that happens from, it's the old saying, I say this all the time, who's the smartest person in the room? It's the room. The collective room is always the smartest. So yes, I believe in mentors. I have mentors, coaches, the whole thing. Even beyond your question, products and services and programs that break stuff down and teach and tutorials and those kind of things. I'm still big into those. Being as involved as I am, there's not usually too many things that I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that. But it's the one thing where I'm just like, oh. And then the way my mind works is I'll take that one thing and I'll turn it into something completely different. And then we have our own spin-off product or service based, as a result of seeing that. We're actually this year probably going to release some more product-based, where you go in and there's going to be a lineup of 15 different things that I've taught, and it's a course that you buy into. I'm big into that space. I think that's a winner right now, especially on demand and otherwise. But coach-wise, I mean, my God, how can I not have somebody that I work with like that when we see the benefits with our people all the time of having somebody and the accountability that comes with that, and just knowing that you're going to have to go to somebody. So, great question.
Our next question comes from Shirley Michelle, and she says, What's the best way to leverage my past listings? Meaning, how do I go after listings in the area that my listings have already sold in?
Okay, Shirley, great question. Also a one-on-one student of ours, newly one-on-one student of ours. Best way to leverage your past listings, right? Like listings that have already sold or listings that are current. Listings that have already sold? Yes. It's eyeballs. That's it. Anything is about eyeballs. Money follows attention. Remember that principle. Money follows attention. Money follows eyeballs. This is why having a list is important. This is why having your own database is important. So I would say anything that's going to attract eyeballs is what's worth doing. So when you look at things like Facebook right now, and the idea that you can put up a promoted post right now. We have a thing called a listings package where we do this for people, but you can do it yourself, where you have a listing and you do a promoted post where you send it to areas, the neighborhoods where that listing was, and you say, look, your neighbor's property just sold. I'm not sure if you're aware, but this may have changed the value of your property. If you'd like to know how it's changed. And now you're leveraging predictive analytics, because we know when that property sells, within a certain amount of time, more listings are going to come up, and now we're trying to leverage that by getting eyeballs to it, okay? That's one way that you could do it. You could also send something out like that and say, you know, your neighbors put up like again, the property that just sold, and maybe even do like guess what it sold for, and start gaining people that way, start gaining interaction that way. Another thing you can do, a lot of people don't know this, is you can actually take recent sales and you can put them into Google Maps, and you can create a little map that has like little darts or little pins showing where properties have sold of yours, and you can use that to leverage when you go in for a listing appointment or something like that. You can say, hey, look at this. Here's the properties in this area that I've sold. Or you can use your brokerage's listings and say, here's the ones that we've sold. Or you could take those properties, put them into Google Maps, have the little icon there with all the different darts in the area, and you could take a picture of that, promote that on Facebook to the area, and say, basically, look at what we've done with your neighbor's properties. Look at these properties we've sold. If you'd like to be next, or you'd like to know how this works, give me a call at, or whatever. It's all about, I'm literally ad-libbing these as I say them right now, but it's just eyeballs. It's all about attracting eyeballs. One of the things that we are really big on within our coaching, and just me in general, is getting you, it's kind of like, you know, give someone a fish or teach them how to fish. Like, I'm ad-libbing these right now. I've never even said these to our students, and yet the reason why I'm able to do that is because it's the way I think. We want you thinking in a certain way. So it's not whether Jared has taught us that or not. It's a matter of, will that gain eyeballs? Will that attract attention? Anything you can do to do that is a great thing.
Our next question is from Chris Walnowitz, and he says, Jared, some of our agents have asked me about farming areas. What criteria would you use to determine if an area is worth farming?
All right, Chris, great question. You want to know with your agents, what criteria would I use to know if an area is worth farming? And for any of you that are newer or whatever, farming is basically where you're staying in touch with that group. You're trying to get, you're finding various ways to get in front of them on a regular basis in a specific area to get them to use you when the time comes. And what would I do? There's kind of a thing within our industry that first thing you want to look at is turnover ratio, and you want to see like how often are houses turning over, because you obviously don't want to spend the time, work, money necessary or needed to farm an area if there's just not a turnover there to justify it, you know? So generally people say 5, 6, 7% right in there is what you're looking for turnover. An area that has a lot of an older population generally is going to turnover. So there's one way you can look at current turnover, and then there's also you can look at, you know, predictive analytics. Again, these older people are going to turn over. They're going to move out, go into homes. They're going to sell their homes. They're going to, you know, whatever that may be. So you obviously want to look at the turnover ratio within a place. The other thing you really want to look at is, does somebody already have a stronghold? You know, there's no reason to go into an area where you're going to be completely fighting upstream because someone else has already dominated that area. You know, it's just not worth it. So when you look at an area, if you live in that area, that's a great place to do. You can already see who's giving who's getting the postcards, who's sending the postcards, who's dropping by, whatever it may be. But you also want to pick areas that are kind of untapped. Nobody's really being really consistent with those areas. And believe it or not, that's not that difficult because a lot of people are not consistent. So you don't want to pick areas like that. You obviously want to pick areas that fit the profile of the person you want to work with, meaning the price range you want to work with, meaning the location you want to work with. It's not too far from where you work, where you live. I always like to start personally in areas that I would live in because they're the easiest one to do. They're the easiest one to create the story, the narrative that matters. You know, when you say, look, who's better to sell this neighborhood than somebody who actually cares about the neighborhood, you know? That's always the best place to start to kind of hone your skills, see what works. It's a great excuse to walk the neighborhood. It's a great excuse, you know, to be able to walk the neighborhood and go right home. I would start there, but beyond that, you start looking at turnover ratio, you start looking at places that don't already have a stronghold, you look at places that are in the price range and the location you want. All of these things are really what's going to matter when you start figuring out what farm or what area you want to farm.
Our next question is from Glenn Elliott, and he says, what is your opinion about doing virtual open houses on Periscope? Do you think doing that discourages prospects from going to the open house, or do you see it as an enhancement, allowing more people to view the house?
Great question, and a question that, quite frankly, I've thought a lot about and a lot of people have thought a lot about because Periscope, not just Periscope, Facebook live streaming is about to happen. It's already happening with many celebrities, and now I saw something yesterday. It's getting put out now in limited edition to a lot of people, not me yet, what I'm a little ticked about. I don't know what I have to do to make that happen. But live streaming is becoming a part of our life. I am live streaming, like literally right here. Look, Periscope is happening right now, okay, as we're doing this. There are people on here. There are people asking questions. There are people occasionally hitting hearts. There are people sharing. There are people doing all these kind of things. Live streaming is becoming a part of our lives, okay? So I was tempted at first when I was looking at Periscope for virtual tours, and I was tempted to say, look, not everything is a business opportunity. Like, not everything is how do we turn this into? And then I stopped myself and I went, you know, I don't think it's that bad if you have the following, because you got to understand with doing Periscope and doing live streaming, you're leaving out a huge percentage of the audience. Like, it's not doing a virtual a tour or a live virtual tour of a home is fine as long as it's not in place of doing an actual open house, okay? Because you're leaving out such a large percentage of people who don't even know what Periscope is. They don't even know, you know, what live streaming is. They don't even know what these things are. And so as long as that's the case, you can't only do those things. They're just a part of your strategy. So as far as having it as part of your strategy, all for it. Because how long does it take? You could do it right before you're actually there for your open house. You hashtag it correctly, you promote it correctly. The other thing that it does that's really cool that you now have the ability to do is that when it's done, it automatically records as a video. You can now take that video, put it out to your social following. You can take that video, send it out to your database. You could take that video, promote it on places like Facebook and such, promote it on Twitter, promote it on these places, and now specifically target buyers, home buyers, people in that area that are looking, whatever, with an actual virtual tour opposed to just you know, a couple of pictures or, hey, come see this. You're actually showing it to them. So I love it from that perspective. I love it as long as it's a part of the strategy. It doesn't overtake the strategy that takes a little longer, which is in person.
Our last question is from Ginny Lee Deptula, and she says, how do you deal with sellers that want to overprice their house?
That's a great question. All right, Ginny, you want to know, how do we deal with sellers who want to overprice their house? I do want to start off this question by saying something that I say to the people in my office all the time when we deal with clients and customers and such that are just irrational. And I say, look, don't try to rationalize the irrational. Don't try to have a conversation with someone and rationalize to them why something should happen or shouldn't happen, and you're not understanding why they're not understanding. They're not understanding because they're not rational. You can't rationalize to the irrational. I want to start with that. Let's assume for a second that these are rational people. Many rational people who get into a home selling situation are in the third most stressful time in their life, death, divorce, and moving, and everyone wants to believe that they have to at least give it a shot. I've got to at least try, and I've got to convince you that it's worth this. Like, this is, if I don't believe it, you won't believe it. And they're going to try to do that. And that's fantastic. They're within their right to do that. But you have to understand, as a real estate professional, remember, professional, that part of your job is to educate that consumer. Because they may not know what they're doing to themselves by overpricing in the short term, because they think they're going to give it a shot and then they're going to move on. If it didn't work, we'll just come down. And you've got to come in with the stats. You've got to come in with the ammo to be able to show them, look, here's your activity the first 2 weeks. Here's what happens. When you miss this activity, here's what happens when you're now chasing the market, and now you can't even get what you got before because now your listing is considered stale and everybody's going, what's wrong with it? And now they think you're desperate. And now you're not having the multiple offer activity you could have had before. Or worse yet, if it now takes 6 months to sell before we get another offer because we didn't price it right off the bat. Well, now where are we 6 months from now? What kind of a market are we in? Did the market go down? We don't know what's going to happen with any of that. And so I used to come in, obviously, with all of the stats, all of the whatever, try to justify to them, here's where I came up with the price. Can you show me otherwise where that price came from? Because I'm going to have to justify this to an appraiser. I'm going to have to justify it to another agent. And if I can't, then it doesn't matter what we sell for. It doesn't matter what a property sells for. It matters what it closes for. Okay? Almost 40% of properties end up never going to closing because the appraisal doesn't work out. So it does no good to sell it if it doesn't actually close. So how can you justify to me and how can I justify to them that this price you're telling me is correct, okay? It's amazing when you put people on the other side and make them do it. Now, some of you are afraid to do that because you're like, well, the other agent just told them they'd list it. Again, professional, you're spending 6% on. Do you really want to work with someone who just does whatever you tell them to do, even though their logic, even though their stats tell them something different, who's willing to waste their time, which means that they're probably desperate and just need a listing and will do whatever it takes to sell your property, no matter what the price, no matter what you tell them to do, is that really somebody that you want to work with? I have no problem pricing it like this if I can justify it. If I see somewhere in here that this makes sense, that it's actually going to close at that price, that it's actually going to. That is one step in the process of what you need to do when you're trying to figure out, is this somebody you want to work with? Is this a price you're willing to do? Is this, whatever it happens to be. The next thing that I always work with when we're talking about a seller who's being unrealistic about the price of a property is one tactic I would use with them is I would say, hey, we're not able to come to a price here. I'm putting all this money out. Let's face it, when it comes to marketing and such, you're putting the money towards the property. I would tell them if you are that dead set on that is the price of the property and you want to use my systems, my processes that get you unpredictable results from compared to traditional realtors, they get you untraditional results compared to traditional realtors, then I need to put some kind of stipulation in the contract that if this property does not sell at this price, my marketing dollars are coming back to me. Okay? Now that's a tricky one, and a lot of people get really scared about that. But when you're talking about a client who is dead set, that's what it's worth, then in some sense it's not a bad thing to tell them that I need you to put your money where your mouth is. I'll put it up front, but we need to put it in the agreement that if this doesn't sell at this price and then you decide not to sell your property, I can't in good conscience as a professional spend my money on a property that I'm telling you it's not worth that price. The other thing that I tell them, and you got to say this the right way, but I kind of joke with them, is I joke around and I kind of say, hey, I just want to make sure, because you're sure the market right now is skyrocketed, it's at the very top, it's at the whatever, that you are going to use that same mentality, that same attitude when we go to find you a house, right? So I just want to make sure that when it comes to somebody buying your house, that you're going to say, look, this is the seller's market, it should go higher than, we should set records, we should whatever. But then when we go to buy a house with you, you're not going to now try to lowball the next seller and expect them to take something different because we're buying and selling in the exact same market. Now, if you do that with the right tone and you're smiling about it and you're laughing about it, what you're really doing by doing that is you're making them think and you're bringing up real facts and you're getting them to understand that they're really not being that realistic, okay? There's what they want, and then there's the reality of the situation. And your job as a real estate professional is to get them with facts, with your expertise, to understand the reality of the situation. And you can do that through facts, you can do that through jokes, you can do it through your tone of voice, you can do that through the offer to have them put in the contract if they really believe in that price so badly that you can't justify and they can't justify, that if it doesn't sell, the marketing dollars you spend are going to be reimbursed to you. There's many different ways to do this, but they're all part of your job as a professional, okay? So, I hope that helps, guys. This is going to conclude episode 10 of #JJ Off the Cuff. If you have questions, guys, you can send them to me at Jared James Today, Facebook.com/Jared James Today, Twitter at Jared James Today, Instagram at Jared James Today, Periscope at Jared James Today. Put your questions in there. Love to get them. You ask them, guys. I'll answer them. I hope you guys have an awesome holiday season, Christmas, whatever it is you happen to celebrate. I hope a lot of you, we've got a webinar coming up in January you can register for on our site where we're going to be talking about your business plan and what to do for 2016. I hope I'll see a lot of you on there. Talk to you guys soon.